Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Tes Zayin Amud Beis, that's 16b of Maseches Kiddushin. We're starting from 5 lines down on the page. The first word on the line is Hakol, and 3 words in it says Masiv Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes posed a contradiction. The Gemara previously quoted from Reish Lakish, who said something novel. Reish Lakish said that an Ama Ha'ivriya, a Jewish maidservant, whose father sells her to a master, when her father dies, she goes free from the master. And Reish Lakish made a kal v'chomer. He said that if a maidservant goes free from the master with simanim, when she reaches puberty and has signs of puberty, she goes free from her master. So, and yet that does not free her from her father. Her father still has certain domain over her when she reaches 12 years old, when she reaches puberty, whenever that is, until she becomes a bogeres, when she reaches full-fledged adulthood. So her father maintains some domain over her. So if simanim, if puberty sets her free from the master but does not make her free from her father, then her father's death, which does set her free from her father, all the more so it should set her free from the master. That was Reish Lakish's kal v'chomer, and that's how he concluded that indeed, if her father dies, she goes free from her master. The Gemara asked a question on this. The Gemara said, if that's the case, then why wasn't this listed in the Mishnah as one of the examples of what sets an Ama Ha'ivriya free? The Mishnah had said that in addition to the ways that in Eved Ivri, a male slave goes free, a female maidservant goes free in an additional way. It said if she reaches puberty. Why didn't it also say if her father dies? So the Gemara said, well, actually, it's still true, but there's other things that the Mishnah didn't list everything. So the Gemara basically wanted to know what things do we list and which things are we not listing. And the Gemara basically came out that we're only listing things that have kitzvah. The Gemara then said we're only listing things that have a known time or amount to set one free. So it's a known amount, if the cost to redeem, it's a known amount. There's a known time after 6 years at Yovel, but when the father dies is a complete unknown. We're not listing those types of things in the Mishnah. So the Gemara said, so then why do we list simanim? Why do we list puberty? That's not known when it's going to be. It depends when she develops those physical characteristics. So how come that's listed? So there, Rav Safra said that simanim, puberty, it's true there's no set time limala, meaning until she reaches actually produces those signs, we won't consider her to be free yet. But there are simanim lamata, there is a kitzvah lamata, there is a set time below, meaning before a certain age, she will, even if she has these signs, or if a male had signs, it wouldn't be a sign of puberty. We would say that if it happens seemingly before she's 12 or before he's 13, depending on the exact scenario, but before they reach a certain age, we would say just because they're producing physical signs does not mean that they actually reached puberty. It must be that that's just a mole growing or something. It's not, they haven't actually reached it. So there's kitzvah lamata, there's a set time, below, meaning there's a time where up until then we will not say that we will not consider it to be reaching that level of maturity, even though there's no kitzvah lamal, even though there's no age at which we say, okay, for sure now you've reached adulthood. There might be actually at 20, but that's a sort of a different story. But in general, it could be 12, 13, 14, whenever the person actually produces those characteristics, that's when they would be considered to have those simanim. But there's no set time above, but there is a set time below, meaning there's a minimum age. So that's what Rav Safra said, and that's sort of where we where we concluded. The reason why we're reviewing this is because it's very important for today's Amud. So the Gemara now says, again, we're 5 lines down on Tes Zayin Amud Beis 16b. The Gemara says, Masiv Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes asked a contradiction on Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish is trying to say that an Amma Ha'ivriya, a maidservant, goes free when her father dies. Asked Rav Sheshes from the following Brisa. The Brisa says, Reb Shimon Omer, Reb Shimon says, Daled Manikim Lahem. There are 4 types where we are ma'anik them. Ma'anik ha'anaka is the idea that we've referenced in the past, that when a slave goes free in certain circumstances, they are to be given a gift to take with them, some kind of severance, a payment. So the Brisa says, Reb Shimon says that there are 4 scenarios where we're ma'anik, where we give this severance. Gimel be'ish, the Gimel be'isha. There's 3 by a man, and there's 3 by a woman. But there aren't 4 by either one specifically. I mean, there's 4 altogether. 3 of those 4 apply to a man, and 3 of those 4 apply to a woman. But not all 4. Because one of the 4 is simanim, is puberty, and that does not set a man free, that only sets a girl free. So only 3 of the 4 apply to a woman. Ve'eng ritzia be'isha. And there's no ritzia, there's no concept of a girl having her ear pierced to stay on longer, and so being set free when Yovel comes after that is one of the 4, and that does not apply to a woman, it only applies to a man. So what are the 4? At this point we think that the 4 are the following, according to Rashi at least. Rashi says that the Gemara thinks at this point that the 4 are that a slave goes free after 6 years, which applies equally to a man or a woman. Yovel sets a slave free, whether it's a man or a woman. And Nirtza, one who got their ear pierced and staying on longer, so that's only relevant to a man. Yovel also sets him free, and that's being counted as separate, at least at this point in the Gemara. That Yovel sets him free, and that the master's death sets him free. If the master dies, he goes free. If he's within the 6 years and the master dies, he does not go free. He still has to serve the family. If he's past the 6 years and the master dies, he does go free. So the third one is the death of the master after the ear has been pierced, and that only applies to a man. And the 4th one is simaning, is puberty, maturity, and that only applies to a woman. So the first 2 apply to both, that you go out after 6 years, or you go out at Yovel, whichever one comes first. But the 3rd one, that you go out when the master dies, in the situation of Nirtza, that only applies to a man, because Nirtza, the idea of staying on after having his ear pierced, is only true for a man. And siman and puberty, which sets a girl free, is only true by a woman. So, says the Gemara, the Gemara says, V'im Isa, and if it was true like Reish Lakish is saying, that the death of the father sets her free, Nisni Nami Misas Av, it should also mention that. Meaning we're listing 4 situations where Ha'anaka applies, where the master gives severance after setting the person free, and there's no reason why this shouldn't be counted there. If it's true that the death of the father sets her free from the master, so it shouldn't mention that in this list, and it shouldn't be just 3 that apply to a woman, it should be that there's a 4th. So maybe you'll say, yeah, there really are more. It's just only listed some of them. But it says that there are 4. It gives a number. And when you give a number, you don't say, there are 4, but really there are more. Meaning in the Mishnah, when we applied this idea, we said, really there are more. That's because it didn't say that there's any specific amount. It just started listing them off. But here, if you say there are 4 and there are really 5, then that doesn't make sense. So don't tell me that there are more. So maybe you'll say, no, when we say we're only listing the things that have a specific time, just like we said about the Mishnah, and the father's death has no designated time. We don't know when that's going to be. So when we said 4, we meant 4 that have a designated time or amount, but not death, which doesn't have a specific time. So maybe that's why we didn't list it. We're listing 4, the 4 that have a specific time, but that doesn't, so we didn't list it. Says the Gemara, simanin, but it did list simanin. It did list puberty, de'englam kitzvah, which has no set time. We don't know when that's going to happen, and yet it listed it. So we see we are listing things that don't have a specific time. Ukatani, it counted it. V'chitema hachanami k'der Rav Safra. And if you'll tell me, let's just give the same answer that we gave in my introduction, that Rav Safra said, simaning, puberty, it does have a set time. It has a set time, it has a minimum set time, a minimum age before we would consider it puberty. So that's considered to have a set time, just like we said about the Mishnah. So the Gemara says, okay, but v'ha'ika misas adon de'englahem kitzvah ukatani. But one of our 4 that we mentioned was actually the death of the master. We are saying things that don't have a set time, because one of the 4 that I gave was the death of the master, right? One of the 4 is that when the slave is near, so when he gets his ear pierced, and then the master dies, so that's, he goes free and he gets hanaka, he gets his severance. But that's not a set time, that's when the master dies, it's not set. So the Gemara says, no, you're mistaken. Misas adonami lo katami. No, that's not one of the 4. Again, it didn't say what the 4 are. We were just surmising that those were the 4. So the Gemara, no. Misas adon was not one of the 4. The master dying is not one of the 4 because we are only saying things that have a set time. Vel arba minu. So what are the 4? So the Gemara tells us what the 4 are. What are the 4 examples where a slave goes free and gets severance and it's a set time or set amount? It's shanim, 6 years, the slave goes free. The yovel, and then separately it counts yovel shel ritzia. Yovel after ritzia, after having his ear pierced, because it's a unique thing, because it only is true by a man, not by a woman, because a woman doesn't have ritzia, she doesn't even have her ear pierced. So it counts yovel twice in the 2 different scenarios. One is yovel before 6 years, one is yovel after 6 years. In either case, when he goes free, he would get his severance. And lastly, what's the 4th? The Amaha'ivriya b'simanim. And the Amaha'ivriya, the maidservant that she goes free with puberty, which is also set, as we've said, because it's set below, there's a minimum age. And so at this point, we've defended it. We're saying, really, Reish Lakish is correct. Really, if the father dies, the woman, the maidservant goes free, and she will even get hanaka, she will even get severance. But it didn't list it because it's not set. And hachanami mistabra, and really this is logical to say, dekatani seifa, because the seifa, this brisa went on and it said, iyata yachalomar arba be'echad mehem. It said you can't say that there are 4 by either of them. It said that Rav Shimon said there's 4 altogether, 3 by a man, 3 by a woman, but you can't apply all 4 to either of them. Levishain simanim beish ve'en ritzia beisha, because he explained, the brisa explained, because simanim doesn't apply to a man. Reaching puberty does not set a man free. Ve'en ritzia b'isha. And ritzia and having her ear pierced doesn't there's no concept of her staying longer that then you would say that yovel sets her free. That's after ritzia, because there is no after ritzia. There is no getting her ear pierced. That's what the brisa said. V'im isa, and if it's true that we are listing, and if it's true that we're even listing things that have no kitzvah, if it's true, what are we trying to prove here? Sorry, 1 second. So Rashi explains, Vim Isa, Rashi says, he's saying, Hachanami Mistabra. The Gemara is saying it's also logical that we're not mentioning Misa Sa'adam, the death of the master. That's not one of the four. And we're saying the reason is because it doesn't have kitzvah, it doesn't have a set time. Oh, because if it was true that we're mentioning the death of the master, so the Gemara says, then Be'isha Miya Mishkachas La Arba. There's also death of the master by a woman, and she would have 4. Right? Because a maidservant, if her master dies, she also goes free. So if we're including that scenario, then really it's clearly 4. Forget about the father dying, the master dying. When the master dies, the maidservant goes free. So you would have Shanim, you have 6 years, you have Yovel, you have Simanim, and then a 4th one for the woman. When her master dies, she goes free. So you see, says the Gemara, Shema Mina, we see from that we're not listing things like that. We're not listing things like masters dying or fathers dying because they don't have kitzvah, because they don't have a specific amount. At the end of the day, a specific time, we're not listing those things. So at the end of the day, Reish Lakish's halacha could still be true that when the father dies, the maidservant goes free. But Masiv Rav Amram. But Rav Amram now raises a contradiction against Reish Lakish from the following brisa. The brisa is a very similar one. It says, Ve'ilu ma'anikim lahem. And these are the ones who we give a severance gift to when they leave. Slavod hayotze bishanim. One goes out after 6 years. Uve yovel, and one goes free at yovel. Uve misa sa'adon, and one who goes free when their master dies. So here it does list the master dying. The ama ivriya b'simanim, and an ama ivriya, a Jewish maidservant who goes free when she reaches puberty. V'im isang, if Reish Lakish's halacha was true, that when the father dies, the maidservant goes free, nisni nami misasav, it should also mention that. It should mention that when the father dies and she goes free, she gets her severance. V'chitema tana v'shayir. And if you'll tell me that really there's more, just don't list all of them, v'ha elu ktani. But it says the word elu, which these are, and these are seems to limit it. These are the cases. There's no more. V'chitema davar sheish lo kitzvah katani, davar shein lo kitzvah lo katani. Maybe you'll argue that no, it only mentioned the things that have a set time. When it said these are, it meant these are the ones that are set. And that's why it didn't mention the father dying. Simanim, didn't lam kitzvah, but it mentions simanim, it mentions puberty, which doesn't have a set time. Ukatani, and yet it says it. So we see we do have things that don't have a set time. V'chitema achanamikid Rav Safra, maybe you'll say, no. Remember Rav Safra told us that simanim does have a set time, it has a minimum set time. But at the end of the day, you can't get around the fact that it does mention the death of the master. Misas Adam, the death of the master. That's one of the examples. And that has no set time. And yet it mentions it. So we see we're listing things even though they don't have a set time. So why didn't it mention the death of the father? Says the Gemara, Tiyufta de Reish Lakish Tiyufta. This is a rejection it's a refutation of Reish Lakish, confirming it's a refutation. This brisa shows that Reish Lakish is incorrect, that the maidservant does not go free when her father dies. Ask the Gemara, how Reish Lakish kavachomer Omar. Reish Lakish, very nice of a brisa, but he told us a kavachomer. He deduced it logically. He said, when it comes to a master, she goes free with simanim, she goes free with puberty, but she doesn't. But that's not enough to set her free from her father. She's still in his domain. So when her father dies, which does set her free from her father, all the more so that should set her free from her master. That was his kavachomer. He argued a fortiori. It's a logical argument. Why are we bothered that there's a brisa that contradicts that? So it says the Gemara, kavachomer prichahi. The kavachomer has a refutation. Mishum de'ikol amifrach, because you can ask that it's not a good kavachomer, because you can say malas simanin shenishtana haguf. You're comparing apples and oranges. Simanin is nishtana haguf. Simanin, puberty, the body has undergone a change. And maybe that's why she goes free from her master, because it's almost like he purchased someone else. This is how Tosfos explains it. That it's a new person now. So he purchased a girl before puberty. Now she's post-puberty. It's like a new person. And so that's why she goes free. This isn't the one that he purchased. Tomar b'misas av shekein lo nishtana guf, as opposed to her father's death, she doesn't change. Her body doesn't change as a result of that. So maybe there's a specific reason, and you can't compare it. And you can't say, oh, you see that her father's death is a stronger impetus to set her free, because it even sets her free from her father. But that doesn't help us because over here, when we're looking at the master, so there's a very specific reason why puberty should set her free, because now she's a different person. As opposed to her father dying, that doesn't change her at all, so perhaps there she does not go free. So at the end of the day, that seems to be how the Gemara concludes that she does not go free when her father dies. Although I think the Gemara is not quite finished with it. The Gemara continues, it says, Tani Chada, one Tana taught Anak Eved Ivri La'atzmo, that when you pay the Eved, his severance pay, in this case an Eved Ivri, a male slave, when he goes free and you give him his severance gift, it goes La'atzmo, he gets to keep it. And the Anak Amal Ivri La'atzma, and the maidservant, her Hanaka, her gift, goes to her. That's that's what one Tana said. That when the male goes free, he gets his severance money. When the female goes free, she gets her severance money. B'tanya idach, but another brisa says, Anak amal ha'ivriya u'mitziyasa le'aviyah. It says that her hanaka, her gift, her severance gift, goes to her father. And also a mitziyah. If she finds a lost object, it also goes to her father. Ve'en l'rabba al maschar batala bilvad. As opposed to her master, if she finds something, she gets to keep it. She has to reimburse her master for the time that she took off to pick up and store whatever she found, but he doesn't get the object. He just has to, he could be reimbursed for lost time. But that's sort of a side point. The main point is that we have a machlokes between two Tanaim. We have a dispute between two Tanaim. One says that when a maidservant goes free, her severance gift goes to herself, she gets to keep it. The other one says that it goes to her father. What are they arguing about? My love, isn't it that they're not arguing, they're just talking about two different cases. Hadanafka b'simanim, v'hadanafka l'abamisas av. One is talking about where she goes free because of simanim, she reaches puberty. When she reaches puberty, so then she goes back to her father's domain. So that's where we said that her father gets the severance. But the other one is, why wouldn't her father get the severance? Because he died. It must be that it's talking about where she went free because he died. And that seems to be a proof for Reish Lakish, that indeed you do go free she does go free when her father dies. So, and that's why she gets to keep the severance, because her father died. So the Gemara says, well, no. They could both be talking about where she goes free because of siman, because she reaches puberty. And if she did not yet reach puberty and her father died, she would not go free, because her father dying does not set her free. Not like Reish Lakish. There's no proof for Reish Lakish. So then, we have a contradiction. Why does one brisa say that she gets to keep the severance, and one brisa say that it goes to her father? So it's very simple. V'lo la'av. One is talking about where the father is alive, and one is talking about where the father is not alive. Not that she went free because he died. She didn't go free when he died. He died when she was younger, and now she reaches puberty, and she goes free. So then, who does the severance pay go to? That's where it goes to her, because her father's not alive anymore. So that's how you can reconcile these two prices. In both cases, it's talking about she went free when she reached puberty, but one of them is talking about where the father's alive, then the severance money goes to him, and in the other case is where he's no longer alive, then the severance money she gets to keep. Okay, now the Brisa also mentioned to us that when an Eved Ivri goes free, when a male servant goes free, he gets to keep the severance. So says the Gemara, Bishlama anak ama ha'ivriya la'atzma. I understand that the need to teach me that in the case where her father died is dead, and she goes for puberty, that she gets to keep the hanaka, the gift. Limute achin. It's to teach me that her brothers don't get it. You might think that her brothers inherit the right to the severance pay, because they are the halakhically they inherit the father. So you might think that they can also inherit the rights to her severance pay, and that she would have to, that really it would go to them. So the Brisa is coming to teach me that that's not the case. The Tanya, because we're learning a Brisa, in the context of Canaanite slaves, it says that they will be an inheritance to your children after you. So Canaanite slaves are inherited. We learn from here that the Canaanite slave is inherited by the sons, but the daughters are not inherited to the sons. Meaning the brothers do not have rights over their sister. Even though the father had certain rights to her production, her right if she worked. This is all before she turns 12 and a half, before she's a bogeres. But when she's younger, the father has domain over her. And he has a right to, like we said, to her mitzvah. If she finds an object, he has a right to her ma'aseh yadayim. If any money she produces, she earns. But if the father dies, the brothers do not inherit those rights. So from here we learn that a man does not inherit over the rights of his daughter to his sons. So that's why it needed to teach me, in line with that, it needed to teach me that the severance pay goes to the daughter, to remind me that it doesn't go to the brothers when the father dies. She gets to keep it. But why did the Brisa have to teach me that when the Eved Ivri is set free, he gets to keep the severance? Pshita, that's obvious. El Alaman, who would it go to? The man has the rights over his earnings. Why? Where else would that severance pay go to? That's obvious. So Amar Rav Yosef says, Yud karas kachazina hacha. A little bit of a strange expression here. The way Rashi understands it, he's saying that he's taking a yud, which is very small, the letter yud, and he's making it into a whole city. In other words, he made this Mishnah long for no reason. It's superfluous. It's pshita. It is obvious. It is obvious that the Eved Ivri gets to keep his own stuff. There's no chiddush. There's nothing novel about it. That's how Rav Yosef addresses it. Abaye says a different thing. Abaye says, I have an answer. You know why I needed to say it? Hachi Amar Rav Sheshes, he says, this is what Rav Sheshes said, Hamani Tutayu. Who is the author of this Brisa? The author of this Brisa is Tutai. The Tanya, because we're learning another Brisa, Tutai Omer, Tutai says, Lo v'lo lebal chovo. That it says, with regards to Hanaka, with regards to the severance gift, it is Hanek Taniku Lo, that you give the severance gift to him. And Tutai teaches me to him and not to his creditor. So even though there's a concept which we've discussed of Rav Nassan's halacha, that when you have a third party, when you have three people, and Reuven owes Shimon and Shimon owes Levi, then Reuven could pay directly to Levi. But over here, it's not how it works. Hanaka goes directly to the Eved Ivri, the Jewish slave who's set free. He gets the severance gift, and then he could take care of his creditors. But we don't pay directly from the master to the creditor, and that's what this Brisa is teaching me, that the Eved Ivri gets to keep his Hanaka, his severance gift, meaning it goes to him, and then it's up to him to pay off his existing debts. But we don't pay it directly to the creditor. Okay. Says the Gemara Gufa, let's examine one of the Brisas, actually the first Brisa that we quoted today. And here it's going to bring the entire Brisa, or at least more than what we saw earlier. It says, Eilu manikim lahem. It says, the following are the ones who receive ha'anaka, who receive severance pay. The following slaves who are set free. This is actually both, we quoted a couple of braysos earlier. They were really the same braysa, and now it's quoting both of them in a different order than they were quoting in the Gemara. It says, Eilu ma'anikim lahem, these are the ones who we are manik, who we give a severance pay to. Hayotze b'shanim, one who goes out after 6 years. Uve yovel, and one who goes out at yovel, at the Jubilee year. Uve misas adam, and when the master dies. The ama ha'ivriya b'simanim, and an ama ha'ivriya, Jewish maidservant, when she has her simanim, her signs of puberty, she goes free. Aval boreach, v'yotze b'giroyin kesef, ein manikim lo. But if a slave runs away, or if he is released because he redeemed himself with for money, a discounted rate, prorated rate, ein manikim lo, in those situations he does not get severance pay. Gemara will explain why soon. Reb Meir says, boreach ein manikim lo. It's true that if he runs away, we don't give him any severance pay. But if he goes out, that he was redeemed for a discounted rate, we do still give him severance. Reb Shimon says, Arba manikim lahem. That altogether there are 4 that manikim lahem, that we give severance to. Shlosha be'ish v'gimel be'isha. There are 3 by a man and 3 by a woman. There are 4 altogether, but 3 by a man and 3 by a woman, like we had earlier. And you can't say that there are 4 by either a man or a woman. There's only 3 by each. Because puberty does not set a man free. And there's no concept of a woman being having her ear pierced to stay on longer, that then Yovel would set her free from that. Yovel could set her free before that, but not after that. Minahani mili. Asks the Gemara, from where do I know this? Ditanu Rabbanan, how do I know that all these cases get hanaka, get severance? Ditanu Rabbanan, because the rabbis taught. Yachol lo yumanikim elul yotze b'sheish. I might have thought that we only give a severance gift to someone who goes out after 6 years, because that's where the pasuk is actually found. The pasuk that says, Hanek tanik lo, you should give him a severance gift. It's said in the context of a slave who goes out after 6 years. So, minayim l'rabos yotze b'yovel, u'misas ha'adam b'amal ivri b'simayim. How do I know that even in other situations, like if he goes out at yovel, or if he goes out when the master dies, or if she goes out when she reaches puberty, how do I know that in those cases they also get hanaka, they also get a severance gift? Talmud Lomar, because the pasuk says, Tishal chenu, you should send him. V'chis chenu, and when you send him is the very next pasuk. So there's 2 psukim in a row, and it says you should send him in the 7th year. You should send him, and when you send him, don't send him empty. You should give him severance. So it repeats the word needlessly, that when you send him, and it's coming to teach me something, that there's additional sendings, there's additional ways that a person's set free, which are included in this concept that the pasuk is bringing of hanaka, of a severance gift. So that's how I come to include these other situations of Yovel, and when the master dies, and when she goes out, when she reaches puberty. Now you might think to include also if the slave runs away, or if he is redeemed for Girayim Kesef, for the discounted rate, that also then he should get Tanaki, he should get a severance gift. Talmud Lomar, that's why the pasuk says, the pasuk says, when you send him for free from you, don't send him empty-handed. Give him a severance gift. And what we learn from there is from you, Misha Shilucho Me'imach. Someone who's sending is from you, Yatza Boreach V'yotze B'Girayim Kesef, as opposed to someone who runs away. It's not being sent from you. And also someone who redeems himself also is not being sent from you. He's getting himself out. So in those cases, She'ein Shilucho Me'imach, it's not sending from you, you don't get a severance gift. That was the opinion of the first opinion of the Brisa, the Tanakama, who said that in both cases, if you run away or if you redeem yourself, you don't get the severance. Remeir Omer, but Remeir said, Boreach Eiman Kima, that if he runs away, he doesn't get a severance gift. Dein Shilucho Meimach, that's not him, you're not sending him, he's running away. Aval Yotze B'Girayim Kesef, Sheshilucho Meimach does get, if somebody goes out for a discounted rate, that is you sending him away. How is it that you're sending him away? He's redeeming himself. But at the end of the day, according to Remeir, still you're accepting his money from him, so in a certain way you're involved in his release. As opposed to if he runs away, you're completely uninvolved, so there you wouldn't have to give him severance. But if he redeems himself, then you still have to give him severance. That's according to Remeir. Asks the Gemara, even Boreach though, even when he runs away, Hashlama boy, he has to fill up, he has to pay back the years that he missed, the days that he missed, the months that he missed, and therefore he too should get severance after he fills in the missing time. Titania, because we're learning a brisa, meaning the Gemara I guess is saying, what is this case where a Boreach doesn't get severance? If he runs away, he will get severance after he finishes up his time. Then he finished up his time, he should still get severance. Because we're learning a brisa, how do we know that if a slave runs away, he has to come back and finish up his 6 years? Talmud Lomar, because the Torah says, Sheish Shanim Ya'avod, he has to serve for 6 years. Now, Yachol Afilu Chala, top of the next page says, you might think that even if he gets sick and misses time off work because he's sick, that even then he has to repay the days or months that he missed. Talmud Lomar, that's what the Torah says, in the 7th year he goes out, even if he was sick and missed some days, he still goes out. But that's if he was sick. But if he actually ran away, then he doesn't go free until he fulfills those 6 years. But once he finishes the 6 years, he'll still get his severance. So what do we mean that a Boreach, someone who runs away, doesn't get severance? I mean, obviously, while he's on the run, he's not going to get his severance. But when he comes back, he fills in his 6 years, and then he should get his Hanaka. So Amar Rav Sheshis explained, Hachav here, what are we dealing with? When we tell you that a Boreach, when he runs away, he doesn't get severance. Kigon shebarach upaga bayovel. We mean he ran away, and then immediately after that, Yovel came, which sets him free automatically. I don't know why he ran away. He was about to be set free by Yovel, but he ran away. Mao detema, what would you have said? Hov apik leyovel shiuchumei machrin be. You might say that since Yovel came, it's you sending him away. Or that's what we said. You have to send him away at Yovel. Normally Yovel does get Hanaka. It does get severance. So you might think, V'lo niknaseh, we shouldn't give him a kanas for running away. The way Rashi says it is, it could be even 1 day. He was gone for 1 day. Like, what's the big deal? He only ran away for 1 day, and then Yovel came. So we should treat that like Yovel setting him free. And he should still get his severance. V'nanik, we should give him severance. Kamash malan, that's what the Bryce is coming to teach me. Then no, if he ran away, and then Yovel came, even if it came 1 day later, he gets a knas, he gets fined, he loses out on his severance because he ran away. And so, even in that case, that's what's coming to teach me, that even in that case, if he's a Boreach, if he ran away, he will not get his severance. Okay, we'll hold there.